will see. Because I think there are ways where this could go very wrong yet. Largely involving whether it screws over Div 2 so much that you just don't have a second tier properly anymore. What it means potentially for LEC orgs. Because actually what happens, we end up with like multiple orgs collapsing or the LEC's value collapsing. No sponsors will come in. Because again, people have this assumption that views equal money, and that's not entirely true. It's not. It's converting those views into money via sponsorships and stuff that matter. And a lot of esports views don't buy things. It's the honest answer. It's one of the major issues that we run into. And with that comes this issue with its very temporary viewership, essentially. Now, for the record, I love things like Tomas. I love guest pickups and stuff where we see these bigger options. First pick Oriana, very, very strong. I think it's a very strong option. Good and convincing go. Well, Rich Bridge say yes. A little part of it. I think there's just not a lot of money going around the world at the minute as well. I think a lot of tech and gaming is shrinking, which is not helping. And yeah, I will be interested to see also what does it mean for Div 2? Are we getting an EMEA Masters in winter? Are we getting an ERL Split 1 in winter? We might not. What happened to the ERLs that lose their teams up to this tournament? Are they playing with a team down? Because, you know, we might just not, the drastic option is not getting a winter split at all for ERLs. What does this mean for off-season for the players and teams that might be looking at these players but now can't because they are unable to transfer because of going up to winter split? What happens about academy teams going up to LEC winter kickoffs? Are KCB and KC allowed to play in the same team? If so, what happens with the conflict of interest stuff that stopped having Samsung White and Blue as sister teams? SKT1K and T1S. Like that, those were taken out for a reason, for potential match fixing and other possibilities that opens up for collusion and conflict of interest. So you do run into a lot of issues that I'm not sure have been answered yet. For all that, basically in concept, it's a cool idea, right? Like having some crossover between ERL and LEC is great. I'm personally for kind of having promotion and relegation back properly. But that does involve ending franchising. It does involve at least buying some slots back. But we shall see. There's a lot to go into this, basically. Like, I don't think it's quite as simple as this is good. Because there's a lot of ways it can go wrong, especially if it screws over ERLs, and we just don't have a tier 2 because this leads to splits dying and tier players unable to go across. Close from Misa. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And he's going to pick up the Kiana. So, Kiana can mash Shin Zhao in the right scenarios. You get inside his active range on Crescent Guard, and you can blast him with your Supreme Display of Talent. Anyone who has been following me or Nymera will know exactly what LPL level Kianas can do. We saw Lost Ratones lose to Kiana, courtesy of 113, earlier in this tournament. That's the whole selling point of LR. They have influence conversions, not esports conversions. Correct. But then there's some truth to that. You're right. And that's a big reason why they've done very well for themselves, right? They've got the influencer conversion. However, what does that mean for the teams that don't have that? And actually are potentially going to have a lot of their revenue taken away by, theoretically, by like actually losing rev share options in LEC winter. Gone. Or at least for this time. What does it mean if these players move on or disappear? What does it mean if, as it said, it hurts ERL Div 2? Or Div 1, I suppose, or ERLs in general? Like, what does it mean if, you know, like, there's a lot of things that still need to get answered here. Was more of a draft problem than a hands problem? Yeah, I had my issues with it. I thought the Kian had a really good angle last time. Crown's going to hold the Kaiser. Good with the Galio, good with the Shin Zhao. It's a decent draft for Lost Return, so I think Misa are okay with what they've got as well. That's the insight. You're welcome. Like, again, it's not as simple as this is a good thing, or a bad thing for that matter. And I think it is also quite worrying. How the Misa boys didn't close used to be in the LEC. There's some really good members here. Closer was indeed in the LEC. Left early the split. I think he was finding it a bit stressful. Yeah, like, I think my personal end result would be nice to have promotion relegation back, but I've always wanted that. I've never been a massive franchising fan. I've always thought it's been a bit risky and devalues the space of competition. But anyway, that's a different end of that. Reckless, either Rel or Alistair here. Yeah, kind of fine. Nautilus also okay. Good pairing with the Kaiser, but I don't know how much Nautilus Reckless plays, really. Alistair's fine. Alistair is better into Kiana. Significantly tankier into Kiana. Hey, hello, Alex. Good to have you on in here. Managed a full 12-hour stream. My goat. If conflict first can be resolved, yeah, but if it hurts, well, we shall see. Because the thing is, it might not, because exposure again is not the end. Like, the problem is insignificant. Is if exposure means nothing, if the exposure doesn't bring money, and there's a world where the exposure actually reduces money significantly for teams and therefore hurts stuff. Like, I know that was something that I've not watched the full video yet, so again, I'm pulling back on this a little bit. But I know that was one of the major issues that was brought up by all of the owners. Because remember, none of the LEC teams agreed to this. None of them did. And the way Riot got around it, at least according to Kometo on that Yamato interview, if I remember correctly. And one of the issues they raised up is like, look, actually, this is undercutting the value of not just our slots, but our rev share. And that's going to hurt us. And so actually, exposure may not bring more money, and it'll lose money, and therefore, actually... what you're going to end up doing is making the team significantly less viable. And the exposure doesn't lead to more money and leads to a worsening state of affairs, potentially. But again, for Riot, more exposure means more views, means more skins. And for them, it's probably good. But I do wonder about what it will mean for LEC as a grand scheme. I think on the whole, it's a cool idea for a tournament. And I like the concept. Again, for clarity, I think it's potentially cool. But I can see where the concerns are. And I can see why, actually, if it's not implemented right, it can end up being a detriment in the grand scheme of things. Yeah, and then the thing is, right, if you then want to undo franchising, you then need to buy the slots back. That's the deal with Riot. If they want to do that, they have to buy the teams out, and they've not done that. And I think there is then also an issue, the fact that Riot are currently not beholden to teams, and the fact is the teams don't have the money to go to court with Riot about it. Yeah, but the thing is, to add more teams, Noah, you then if you want to do it properly, the reason they're getting away with this is to add more teams, strictly speaking, you need to have a vote with the rest of the teams, with the owners. That's one of the deals. You can't just Riot aren't allowed to add teams unilaterally. That's one of the ownership deals. So you're not allowed to add teams to the league without it being adding extra slots to the league without it being added into. So actually, to add promoted teams in NA, they had to buy out slots to allow that to happen. So to add more slots, you do that. And it also then hurts rev share because you're sharing between 12 teams, not 10. It's part of the issue. So you end up with like a 10% pay cut, effectively, which is fairly significant. And again, your revenue share is basically not predicated especially heavily on viewership, as far as I understand. And if the viewers are going to co-streams, not to you, I think that affects things well, but I don't actually know on that one, so I'll hold on that one. But my suggestion, if you want to get the other side of the argument, my suggestion would be to go watch the Kometo Yamato interview, because I know that was quite a strongly worded one. And again, none of this is against LR, none of this is against Cadrel. Again, there was that whole thing where Cadrel was to put this offer in front of him, and he went, that sounds great, that sounds really cool, awesome. And assumed, understandably, that the LEC teams had agreed to it. And actually, it was 0 for 10. The Summoner's Rift. So again, like, it's not as simple as this is good. Obviously, for Lost Ratones, it's great. And they got the offer put in front of them, they accepted it. Of course they would. But on the whole, what it is benefiting is realistically Lost Ratones and Riot, but the LEC teams are getting less out of this. They're not getting value out of this particular. Well, potentially, anyway. Like that's what the fear from a lot of the owners is. You know, again, I won't pretend to be a full expert in this. You know, I do need to look in. I need to finish watching that Yamato video is the honest answer. Well, to get that interview with Kometo down. And we'll see. And again, I don't. My worry as well is we're focusing on the LEC stuff. That's fine, but I worry what it means for EMEA Masters. I worry what it means for ERLs, because actually, are we losing a split? What happens to players who get stuck in one of these teams and then can't leave because they're obligated to play in the thing after, in the tournament after? Are we going to see players hired just for a few months to go play this? What happens to academy team issues? Instead of a spot? Yeah, exactly. That might well be a thing as well. We might end up with some stuff like that. Actually, is there value in developing talent as much? Like, Hanzaka raises that issue a little bit as well. We might see a lot of teams just say, screw it. We're sending our team. We're going to go try and boot camp in Korea. Though, again, that was tried with CLG. Shout out to Monte Cristo and the boys who tried that one back in the day, and it ended up in an interesting scenario. Double if went out there. Okay. Let's chat drafts a bit. So, Ornn, Orianna, Corki. That's a big team fight gone from Misa. And Closer is a very good carry jungler. He's gone for the first strike. So he's really wanting to get that upfront burst, be really good, and also snowball as far as he can. The more gold you can get, the better. You are likely going to be going Profane Hydra into Axiomark, tends to be the build these days, if I remember correctly. If you want to see this done really well, go check up any games. COG did not ban. Oh. Hang on, what? No. Delete. And about. Oh. Bots. The tournament between LEC and LCSC will often on world teams would be cool. Some invasion of Tasman. Yeah, oh, hang on, nice kill. Oh, and it's an execute back. Not bad, Mahila. You take that. Some teams of LEC current roster deserve that cut-off profit. Maybe. There's some truth to that. Maybe try to help with the viewers. But again, you start running, like, you... Not every day the Bass gets solo kill. Yeah, true. Yeah, he often trades himself out for some silly options. I think the thing is, you're then running into this issue, right? It's like, well... At that point, you can't just cut them off for money. That's not how it works. Then it just gets worse. It gets significantly worse. Because you then need to basically, if you want that to happen, what you need is for promotion relegation to allow it to be backing. So then they can drop out gracefully that way. Is the way to do it. But you then run into this issue, right? Where it is somehow a crime to be bad, which is just not how it works. Because in the end, someone is going to have to be in 10th place. And it's very difficult to turn that around unless you actually have time to build up a system. And actually, if you're resetting all the time, it's a big time. The Rossman versus GXU might be the most insane thing I've ever seen. How insane? Sylph, how is it looking over there? Ooh, nice. From Closer to get that one, that's important. And one of the reasons it went wrong against Kiana the last time was Bounce kept giving gold over to Kiana, and that can be problematic. Tell on other teams that just shows their own series they play stuff. I think that is very... I think that's a very disingenuous statement, actually. I think that's an incredibly disingenuous statement for a number of reasons. Closer's gonna have to get out of that. Trapped into turret, just about survives, and Velia burns a flash. Oh, the red buff burn! I thought he was done. That's not bad. That's not bad at all. We'll take that. And he gets to invade on the wolf respawn. Nicely done from Velia. But yeah, Noonday, to jump on that one, I think that's incredibly disingenuous. And misunderstands a lot of what it means to compete in a league, as Cormi's going to get taken quite low. Does now to run away from Velia, but he hasn't got the flash, he won't be able to follow, he's fine. Okay. For a number of reasons. Number one, Lost Ratones have got a ridiculous roster. Ridiculous roster. Because actually they are basically a bunch of incredibly talented players who are not getting paid to do this. Like, it was the way it worked with Nord and stuff as well. They are working as a influencer org to get value from streaming, right? And so you're not actually obligated to pay these people what they would be paid at top-end levels of LEC. And actually, as a result, it is very hard to compete with that. In terms of your ability to, like, this is a bit of a flash in the pan, really, in their ability to get these things on. Nemesis didn't need to flash that. Well, I don't know, he was quite low. There's a clockwork wind-up angle where he probably does die there, maybe, an extra auto or two. It might end up being a 1-for-1, but he would probably, may well have died. And he's got, like, no tank stats at this point. So, yeah, it would have been in trouble. Two, and then it doesn't allow you to actually try and play for players that are good but need a chance to develop. And to try things out off a much more reasonable budget front. One of the issues, oh, Mahile, that's unfortunate. Couldn't find the angle, needed to go earlier. I think Baus might still die here regardless. It's Closer. Can look for a lot of damage forwards. Ooh, does just about get back out with the pocket. Still get away with that. Because you're then basically, suggesting that people with a small pocketbook can't build can't afford to be all right. You can't play for a kind of Moneyball type team who the only measure for being in the LEC is success, which is, I think, potentially risky. Now, of course, there's some truth to that, in the sense that actually that's what promotion and relegation would allow for. But that is not what franchising asks. And if you want to change that, then you need to probably buy out the franchising spots, which is where we're coming back to again. If I want this, then they need to pay out the franchising spots, or get the teams to agree to increase the number of franchise teams, which again they have not agreed to do. And the way they are getting around this is by not doing LEC, and this is being something separate to LEC, which is risky. But there we go. It's a lot more competitive than that, and it's a lot more complicated than that. And actually, it doesn't allow for development splits. It doesn't allow for teams to try and play Moneyball. It doesn't allow for teams to actually just be bad sometimes, and that happens, especially if you're running on lower budgets. And it is then very hard also for teams who are struggling or have been struggling for a while to pull in good talent because they don't want to play there. That's the way of things. And I think actually losing to a team that is like Lost Ratones, which is very much a flash in the pan, which they may not even do, to be fair, is a bit of a tricky one. Because, you know, Lost Ratones are a bunch of like world caliber players who would normally develop world caliber price tags. You usually don't have to play at the minute. Oh, that supreme display of talent is disgusting. Yep, Kiana gets to do Kiana things, and that was a bit far. Temper Fate catches Nemesis. In comes the bot lane. Nemesis can have his Justice Punch interrupted, and Closer gets another. It's Kiana being a bit of a kryptonite for Lost Ratones, isn't it? They just need to ban it against players that play it. Faust might get Mahile here. That's the pull back on the bear trap on a rope, but here comes the Forge God. Good chunked around with the lunge. And a bit of joust. It's joust is actually what it is. Looking pretty okay here for Misa in this game, I think. But again, we've seen Lost Ratones come back from bigger deficits than that. How was game one? Pretty convincing from Lost Ratones, honestly. This is already much better from Misa. Much better. Feels like more like the old days where you make a team with people you're like, yeah, exactly. And again, I miss that promotion relegation. How G2 got into the leagues, how Cloud9 got into the league. I think it has, on the whole, hurt a little bit of competitiveness. On the other hand, I think it also, you used to have a lot of promotion relegation, so it basically meant that teams couldn't take risks in a lot of ways because you were in danger of dropping in and out of the league too often. And it did hurt things initially, like sponsors and stuff, because if you couldn't guarantee being in for a year or whatever, it was very difficult to get sponsors, and therefore, if you were a mediocre team, weren't likely to do well, say you're Fanatics or G2s or whatever, it was difficult to like guarantee sponsors who were like, well, I might not actually get much return on investment, especially if you're going to be a mediocre team. Oh god, no! And then so actually your mid and low tier teams really struggle to get sponsors because they wouldn't necessarily be guaranteed to be in the league at some point. They're not going to let this one go to 3, right? Because there's an NACL game coming. We'll see. We'll see. A good lead for Misa right now. And again, that's a Profane Hydra very early for Closer, who's going to blast some people. Good stun onto the likes of Velly, who's gone in and is going to regret that immediately. Oh, Velya. That was very poor. Crowny's now going to die probably as well. Formy gets taunted, but they're still on vision. Nemesis is about to get stunned. Yep, over goes Closer, looking for some more. We'll still have the edge of Ixtal to work with. I mean, this is looking a bit rough for Lost Ratones now. You've got a 0-2 Kled, a 0-2 Galio, and a 1-2 Shenzhou into a hyper carry jungle. One of the things with Kiana, right, one of the reasons she's done so well in LPL is she is a great skirmishing jungler that can also do the old school thing of, I'm now 3 levels ahead and 5,000 gold individually, and be valuable with that kind of amount of gold. I have to go to sleep. I have work at 3. God bless. Pretty hard playing LR's comp into Bardorn, disengage 2. Very true, actually. I hadn't considered that part of it as well, but you're absolutely right. You are obligated to go diving in with the Galio Shinzao kind of combo, and actually you go in and immediately get Tempered Fated, or Shockwaved, or Orn Ulted. Hell, Kiana ulted as well. Kiana quite good as a turnaround play. Batu! Ooh! Nearly got it. Had to leave. I appreciate that. I'm trying to find him now. He's got back to the Twitter. I don't know where he is. He got away with it. That's my goat there. Bousy. Bousy. I think it's better the teams won't agree to even try and expand the league. Not if it cuts their revenue share. Of course they're not going to agree to that. There's no way. So unless they can guarantee that they're going to get an equal amount of revenue share still, then no. Because it doesn't bring in more revenue necessarily. Like that like more teams does not necessarily equal more revenue. Not necessarily. And unless they can get that in writing from Riot, they won't agree to it. And I don't think Riot would agree to it. Saying, of course they're not going to vote for it. Tempered Fate. Shield of Duran, stunned into the wall. Supreme display of talent. And it's Kiana again, guys. It's happening again. My Kiana. Oh, my pretty Empress One. Empress One. Best I've got so far. I need to come up with better lyrics. It kind of fits. It's not the best. Just get better sponsors? That's not how it works, Walter. Like, that's definitely not how it works. And if you want that, then you are asking for the LEC to fail, effectively, in part. Like, that cannot be the end result. Like, it's fine to want LR and LEC. I think that'd be a great thing in a lot of ways. I think it'd be another big org with a big fan base. Awesome. But you can't just do it and cause the league to collapse. And saying just unilaterally, yeah, we're gonna add teams out of nowhere, and the org's going, well, that's gonna lose us X amount of money, would be rough. Hey, Nathalex, good to see you. Yeah, it's the Kiana again. Well, why were LEC invented playing LEC against Winter? The first thing is, it's not LEC. That's the big thing, it's the Winter Kickoff. It's not an LEC split. So they're basically trying to find a way to capitalize on the big hype train of LR, try and find a way to find a bit more overlap and crossover with ERLs, all of which I think are good things. Like, kind of like how LC Cup, K Cup isn't LCK, exactly. And of course, they kind of try to do it a bit Demacia Cuppy, a bit Casper Cuppy. And for the record, I love those competitions. I love the idea of finally getting some ERL, LEC crossover. I think it's been long overdue. However, I think there are understandable complaints about how it's being handled, especially considering potentially just revenue share. There's a lot of complaints. There's questions about, like, actually Koi and Karmine Core had to basically spend a long time and a lot of money to get into the LEC, whereas LR kind of just get it after a year. And like, there's lots of conversations about that kind of stuff as well. And I won't pretend to know all the ins and outs of it. And again, my suggestion would be, and I still need to finish watching the video with the honest answer, is the Kometo Yamato interview. But like the base concept isn't a bad one. There's a couple reasons, Waldo. Number one, it's undercutting the value of their slots, which hurts sponsors. Number two, it's cutting revenue share, as I understand it, and I don't know that for sure. This game is boring. Yeah, it's kind of been just LR kind of struggling in the early game pretty heavily. This is a big old lead to give up. Yeah, slots getting revenue share. That's what the franchise slots pay for. Exactly. That's the big thing. Like again, and and as I understand it, it's hurting rev share. I don't know all the ins and outs. So again, I say this with a certain grain of salt, but that's a big deal because effective. You're adding 2 more teams. You're what, like that's 10% or so pay cut if I've done my maths correctly. That won't cut revenue share. Well, potentially it does. I don't actually know. But again, I'd look into it. But I know basically all the the thing that has been confirmed, at least from various reports and stuff, is that all the LEC orgs voted against it, and it didn't matter. Right, did it anyway? So I think there's been some issues there as well. 2.5% going from 8 to 10. Yeah, or from 10 to 12. I can't remember exactly where it's going from on that one. 1.5 kills a minute in GX per arm versus Ross. Bloody hell. What's happening over there? And again, I don't know all the nuances on it. But yes, effectively, it's hurting LEC teams' bottom lines, or at least that's what they're arguing. And it's also undercutting their slot value, which is a big deal as well, because actually they leverage a lot of things against that value. Like, that does matter. And so theoretically, actually, what you're doing is you're losing LEC teams' money by having this coming in, which is a big deal when LEC teams are already kind of cutting it close. Like, G2 are just about breaking even. And the reason G2 broke even, as I understand it, is because they sold a load of damn shares in crypto. Like, they earned money this year because they showed that they sold their shares in crypto. Solana or whatever it was. Weibo versus BLG Game 3 upper bracket LPL Summer 2024. That's a massive one. Oh, yeah. Is Rocket Belt Galio good? It is. If you play it like very aggressive. So Knight sometimes does it. Nemesis sometimes does it. It allows you to have a lot more upfront burst rather than just be tanky. So you can actually get quite a lot, particularly into squishier comps. It allows your wombo as a Galio to hit a lot harder. It does mean that your ability to frontline is very limited. And again, with the Symbiotic Souls, with this option, you need to get to Riftmaker and Zhonya's really to have any tankiness. All items going to hurt? Yeah, they are. The moment, say, that Profane Hydra gets upgraded, that Triforce gets upgraded, I think it's going to be increasingly hard. So, a 5.3k lead is a lot. A lot of it is in the jungle. And you are obligated as the Shinzao to go forwards quite a lot this game. And so, really, Lost Ratones are going to hit this point where they're going to have to go forwards with their comp and just enter this absolute slaughterhouse of Bardal into Ornal, into Kiana, shoving you into a wall and blowing you up. It's not fun. Slot got overvalued and declining anyway. Then Riot need to buy it out, is the answer. That's the way that the franchising works. That's the deal. That's part of the contract. I just want a more competitive LEC. Yeah, I can get behind that. Yeah, I agree. It'd be nice to have that happen. But I think you have to then do about it the right way. Well, Riot wants LEC profitability. Yeah. Yes, they do. However, they are also primarily interested in Riot's profitability, which is a separate. That is a separate pillar, right? That is. Like that is a separate consideration, right? That is attached to skin sales and stuff and all the rest of it, which actually the LEC teams don't see all that much from. And actually the marketing value of LEC for Riot Games isn't really a consideration in terms of the cut that teams get. They don't, as I understand it anyway. Velia needs to Crescent Guard. Closer, not the best Supreme display of talent actually. Closer has to flash out. Bit messy from Misa. Jumping on a Tungi who survives. Call me in the back of the pick. Still look for a bit of damage here. Red buff. Doing quite a lot of work actually for a second or two, but it's still not enough. And Misa will get the kill onto Nemesis, who dies. So yeah, and again, part of the argument is that adding that this isn't necessarily making the LEC more profitable. Arguably, at least what the teams are saying, they're arguing that it's going to make them less profitable. And therefore, the LEC on a whole is less profitable. And therefore, actually, the teams will be able to afford less successful rosters, and teams will start folding or having to go with cheaper players. And therefore, the competition will get worse. So actually, it doesn't end up better, would be what they're arguing, right? Exactly, and viewership levels on the whole don't directly increase revenue. Crowny looks at the kill to Mahile. They're going to try and call the Forge God this. Good chunk back, knock up on Bounce, who's trapped under the turret, has to be to get out. Crowny's desperately low. Mahile survives. Cormy's coming on over. They want to try and donate the kill over to the Oriana, who gets it with the command dissonance. Nicely worked. Hello, Mr. Watts. Good to see you. Well, that's Waldo. That's what we're saying is LR fans watching, and that's great, to be fair. More viewers is not a bad thing per se, in and of itself. But it is also not a metric that gives you more money per se, necessarily. again, there's a lot more that goes into this. Actually, if what you're doing is you're devaluing slot value, which hurts LEC teams' ability to leverage that against things like sponsors and things as well, you can end up with a problem there. Actually, if it's cutting revenue share stuff, because actually teams are getting less views or less time on screen or whatever else it is, or less rev share from the league, because actually they don't get rev share for this, or rev share is cut because they got two new teams coming in. I don't know all the details on it. Then actually the LET teams end up getting less money, and so they earn less money on the whole, despite more viewers. Like, it's not a guarantee you get more money from this. As arguably, as we're saying, they will get less money. Don't make that assumption. It is not necessarily correct. Yeah, exactly. If you give up 50% of your company to get exclusivity, and then one later you don't get that exclusivity, that's a big deal. It's a big deal. And I can see why that would be a challenging option. I stopped watching LEC because no nemesis. Fair. Again, a lot of people are fans of players, not teams as well, which has been a thing with esports because of the high turnover rate. It's one of the reasons why it sometimes struggles. Say, NA has struggled with creating new heroes, new players that people really want to get involved with, because actually people still fell in love with Double Lip, Yerkson, Dyrus, Sneaky, Jensen, right? Dyrus. Oh, I've said that one already. I'm a cutie pie. Like these players, and they're not there anymore. And you don't get to have like a football player's career of like, okay, I watched this guy at 20 and he's still playing till 34. You don't get a 14-year career. You get like a 2-year career or a 5-year career. Yeah. And so actually, you know, when those players retire or move on to something else, a lot of people follow that rather than the team. And that has been, oh my God, close is so strong. And I found that changing players everything. And that's part of the way it works, right? Because you've got to be competitive and you're there to win, or players get better offers and you can't afford to pay them, or players aren't good enough anymore, or get bought out, and those things happen. But then teams run into the issue. It's like, well, you know, actually this player is gone. What do you want us to do? We've got to try and go with what we got. And if you don't stick around the team, then they struggle to make the money. Because it's not the players that are the... Players being successful does not make the tournament successful. Teams being successful, teams doing well makes the tournament successful. Or like the tournament. I guess it is a tournament. Like the league successful. That's the one. And actually, that is a big difference, right? And that will prove problematic. Nice unstoppableness there from the charge. But yeah, for the record, I'm pro opening the circuit back up again. I think that'd be great. I'd love promotion relegation back. But you can't do this halfway house where actually it just really devalues the team. That's very I can see why that's frustrating. And as we said, there are nuances here where people are understandably fans of players and their personalities and what they play and all those kinds of things, and not necessarily teams. Or actually, you would follow the player, not the team. It's like Duenby for in the LPL, massive example. The Shy, Rookie, Uzi, God's sake, yeah. Are we talking about Misa and Shade? I mean, true enough. Oh, sorry, yeah, suppose, yeah, okay. And again, like, slots are overvalued, potentially, yeah. But then the point is that actually, understandably, if you're in a franchise league, exclusivity is part of the buy-in of those price points. That's part of your point there. That actually, it's not just the cost of a spot in the league; it's what that's also offering you. Like, what is this ticket getting you? And it's not just a spot in the LEC, it's things like exclusivity, it's revenue shares, lots of other stuff as well. Good damage back. The Scream Spare Talent wasn't fantastic. Veli, I think, still dies. Yeah, we're going to 3. We're going to 3. We're going to 3. This is so over. My God. And again, I think you're missing a little bit here. I do. Like, yes, slots might have decreased in value as a straight, like, individual ticket. But I think LEC spots are worth more on the whole than LCS spots, or have been for the last few years anyway. To move to the Valorant model? Probably, but again, suppose then they need to buy up slots. Yeah, because again, that's the big difference. How would you fight against Kiana? There's a few ways. Part of it is mashing her early. Part of it is she's very bloody squishy, and you can't just blow her up. We have seen teams successfully manage Kiana. Part of the problem, actually, is a good Kiana does kind of win games right now. Like, in the LPL, Kiana is first pick